Did you ever get your eye?
I know. I'm covering her ears. She didn't really say that.
Doing good.
I know, Chris and I are always in the bathroom together. Maybe you're the weirdo.
One stands there, one else, and they're hovering, but their legs are up here. Some type, hopefully I can find out. It's weird, but I wouldn't go to the bathroom.
You want to kill the
Mine is cute. Yeah.
Why do you have to I think so. Happy wasn't feeling wrong. You got wrong.
Hey, that's so not nice.
While you was praising, some little toddler.
That's not nice.
In your purse. Had your pad, wallet, and you didn't care.
The Lord is my shield.
It's so funny.
He's your hedge of protection. All right here.
Lord, let him pray ahead. That reminds me.
That's how we teach our kids to worship together.
Pray ahead.
Worshiping slash pickpocketing. All right. Speaking of giving, take this. We're going to take a photo. Pass that plate. Pass that plate. I got there he is. Hi, friend. All right, Nate's coming. We'll go ahead and pray. Father, we pray your blessing over the offering we're about to receive. Lord, we pray that you bless those who give and those who can't give, and that you would help us to use what we take to build up your kingdom. And pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Jesus. Wow, Nate is doing that. A couple of announcements. There's a bulletin. Grace to try to get everybody, but if you didn't get it, it's Matthew is doing it now, and it's one bulletin. It has one side as Homeland and one side as the government.
Nice,
So,
nice. That's good.
yeah. So it has announcements for both churches. And the pig roast is this Saturday. So
Not Friday.
not Friday.
And not yesterday.
And not yesterday. Yeah. March
Just
12th
having
was
coronary.
yesterday. I know. There's been a lot of confusion about when this pig roast is. It is next Saturday.
It's my fault. I'm
Just keep
sorry.
walking by till you see a giant pig carcass.
Yeah. Just keep coming till you see it. But we are trying to spread the word as much as we can. And last year we had a huge crowd. I'm anticipating the same thing this year. But invite your friends. It's not just, I mean, we really want to reach the people in the neighborhood, but this is a great way to invite your friends who don't go to church to come to something that people don't really get to do pig roast a lot here in town. So it gives them. My sister does not enjoy the pictures of the pig, but
They're so cute.
my sister and my
I've been
mom.
sending them to you for weeks.
I prefer to see my food already.
So I'm gonna take enough pictures of the pigs. I can send her one a day.
He's
for the rest
so
of the year.
cute though, and it's like I'm in denial that he's really dead, frozen there.
As you're eating,
And like no, like I walk by him and he's no, he's in the freezer, frozen.
you gotta shoot.
And but I just kind of like,
Did you name him?
As soon as somebody starts cutting into it, they slide it.
Angie, did you name him?
Yes.
I'm kind of ashamed that
Like that would be. We two need to sit in the same row. Okay. So, but yeah, pig roast next week. Becky is figuring out who's making what side dishes and stuff, so you can talk to her about that. Bring something. Definitely come. Bring your friends. Tuesday night at Banding Together, we're reading we meet every Tuesday, and right now we're reading through the Gospel of Matthew, but last Tuesday, we usually have like cookies or donuts and coffee while we're studying, but last week we decided that we wanted to have dinner this week. So we're doing meatball hoagies for dinner on Tuesday, banding together. So if you've never come before, this would be a perfect week to start, because we're actually going to eat dinner. So come and eat meatball hoagies with us and read through Matthew. And Tracy, if you leave at like 3, you can be here. So
I was looking at my car, it's not after that.
it's not. It's not. We'll save you some meatballs.
Yeah.
Bring all your clothing. So we got that going on. And I think this was mostly the announcement. I have to tell you guys this. So first of all, watching all these little kids worshiping today, it was like extremely heartwarming.
And it's apparent that they're watching their parents.
Yes.
Praise
It's
God.
not just their parents, all of you. These little kids watch all of us worship Jesus, and that's how they learn to do that. But the little one that was sitting beside me, she is neighbor across the street, and she comes around. She always is here for play days and stuff, but she's just now starting to warm up to come to church on Sundays. And so the first 2 songs, she was really like getting into it, because usually she comes here and she just kind of stands and watches. But she was really getting into it, and I pointed to her, to Ange, while Ange was trying to get Ange's attention. So, but then her third song really got her, and she was like raising up her hands and praising, and then she sat down in her chair in the middle of the song and was praying. Like, she folded her little hands, and she sat in her chair, and she was like, Jesus, I couldn't hear what she was saying, but she was praying. And I'm like, and Grace is up here on the stage going, but it's just so cool. Like, they really do watch us, guys, and that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing, is raising up this next generation to praise God and not be embarrassed about it. So keep doing what you're doing. Well, I'm sure most of you are sick of hearing me talk. And so the good news is you don't have to do it anymore today, because my sister is going to come share the word with us. Yes! I know, I knew she would want that. So she said, right before I came out here, she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, what was that book you preached all the way through a couple months ago? And I said Ephesians, and she went, oh, sure, good, we're okay. I didn't want to preach. And I said, they didn't listen to anything I said anyway. It would have still been all new information to them. They don't listen. We are very grateful. Let's pray for her, and we'll have her come up and share the word. Father, we're so thankful for your messengers. We're thankful for people who come and share what you have laid on their heart to share with us. And Father, I pray now that as Tracy digs into the word, that you would help us all to set aside all the distractions and things and just focus in on what you have for us. Help your word to settle over our hearts. And we pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. So yeah, she's giving you guys a little break from her, and she needs a little break. You guys may not know this, but she kind of has a full plate. So sometimes she's just like, need a break. So I told her anytime that she needs a break, I can come down. Because this is what I used to do for full-time ministry, so I'm just passing on and I love it. And now I sell skirts, which is a little different. So it's nice to to be able to come back and be a part of this kind of community again. But so she's giving you a little break from her, but I'm pretty much as close to her as you can get. Yeah, so a little bit of the same sense of humor and stuff, so it'll be similar. But anyways, let me see. I'm trying to be all tech savvy, and I just did it on my tablet, so if we don't find it. Oh. All right, so yeah, it was funny. I actually told him, I said, what was that book you said you preached on for 1 million years? Because you guys were in Ephesians for a really long time. I thought it was Ephesians, because I was like, she couldn't have stayed in Philippians for that long. It's pretty short. Challenge me.
She got to take it real slow with Philippians. So that's what we're going to look at today, is Philippians. It's one of my favorite books in the Bible. It's an epistle written by Paul, and it's long for a letter, but it's short for one of the books of the Bible. I mean, I guess back then if you're writing a letter, all the trouble it took to get it somewhere, you weren't just going to, put a couple of emojis. You were actually going to fill it with some good stuff. So it's long for a letter, but short for a book in the Bible. But what I love about the book of Philippians is that it's known as the joyful letter, which is good, because who likes to read some encouraging things sometimes, right? But also, I love that because of the context, because it's the joyful letter, yet Paul was writing it from a place where he was in a very difficult season of his life, where he was under house arrest. And I just find it so beautiful that he wrote this like amazing message of encouragement and hope. And he uses the word joy or rejoicing 16 times in this tiny little book. And I find it so amazing that he was able to bring that message out in a place where he was in his own time of great suffering. So I've always just loved the book of Philippians. Because I think you can really tell a lot about somebody by observing them, not when the things are going the greatest, right? But when things are going the hardest in their life. That's when we really kind of learn somebody's character. And that's how we show other people our character. When they see us going through those difficult seasons that we all have, they're watching us. And that's when they can see kind of who we really are. And so in a season where many of us might have been tempted to be dropping the F-bomb, Paul was dropping joy bombs through this whole letter, right? And instead of focusing on himself, he was focusing on encouraging other people. And I just love that because I think so many times when we're in a moment of crisis or a difficult situation, it's so easy to turn inward, right? And become completely narcissistic and like, oh, the whole world revolves around me and complain and grumble. But here he was able to focus outwardly. And I think how powerful that was to his audience when they got the letter. Somebody trying to cheer them up, and that person is kind of in a worse situation than they are, right? So I'm sure it kind of gave them some perspective on the issues that they were facing. Like, oh my goodness, here's Paul, you know, who has this great call of God to do all these great things, and he's on house arrest, and he's, you know, for 2 years he's just stuck and doesn't know what his fate is going to be. And he's able to write us this letter. So it's kind of amazing the influence you can have when you're encouraging other people from your own place of difficulty. So we're going to read the last part of this letter, and I just want to like kind of take some perspective from Paul. And so we're going to read part of chapter 4. Sorry, I don't usually do this on my tablet. I'm trying to, it's Tracy from the future. All right, I found it. So anyways, it's easier to travel light. So anyway, so this is in chapter 4, verse 4, in Philippians. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and thanksgiving, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you." And then he takes a minute and thanks them for sending him an offering to help him in his time of need because he's under house arrest. So he's thanking them that they gave him some money. And then he says in verse 11, "I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength." It's one of my favorite passages. So I love that. And, you know, I don't think we have to be imprisoned at the moment to find a message in this book, because we all go through difficult times that test our faith and things that distract us and bring out the worst in us. So I like to look at Paul and be like, what is it that brings the best out of Paul in this situation? Like how, you know, because in some ways to us, he seems like a superhero because he's Paul, right? Because we glorified him to the point of like superhero status, but he was just a regular guy like you and I. He made some crazy mistakes in his life, and God used him in amazing ways. So I kind of want to channel that little bit of Paul's personality and know how he was able to be so joyful in this situation and focus on other people and extending encouragement to them. So I felt like when I was reading through the book yesterday, because it's very short, you can sit down and read Philippians like easy one day and just kind of like ponder it. So it's one of those that you can really take the whole chunk of it. But I was reading through it and I thought, I really like this like kind of closing section as kind of a picture into his frame of mind and the way that Paul thinks about things, because I think his prison perspective is very different than the kind of prison perspective that we might have. And so just going to pull out a couple of nuggets that I thought were really cool from this section that we just read and see if we can apply that to us. So the first thing is, like I said, he uses the word joy and joyful and rejoice all the time in this book. And so you can see that right when we started out, he says, rejoice. In case you didn't hear me the first time, let me say it again, rejoice. That's the Tracy version. But no, it does. It says rejoice. No, really, rejoice. And again, I just think how powerful that message is coming from Paul in a situation that he's in, being imprisoned. And, you know, being imprisoned is already a bad deal. But especially when Paul was consumed with such a mission, like God had given him such a burden to be out doing the work, and he was not able to like go to the churches that he had planted, all those churches, you know, and be able to serve them. So these letters were like the only way that he could reach them. What a state of frustration that would be. And I love how it says, after it says to rejoice in that passage, it says, let your gentleness be evident to all. And to me, that was just a reminder that, like, rejoicing brings us peace, because it says that at the end. It says that the God of peace will be with you. So if you're rejoicing, kind of brings you out of your mess a little bit, right? And so let's be real. Sometimes it's hard to rejoice. And I think sometimes as Christians we can make it seem silly. Like we're supposed to be like, yay, my car's breaking down. I'm on a job. Everything's fine. Like, not what the passage is saying. Not what the passage is saying. But I think that the reason we can rejoice when things are hard is because what we have through God is so much bigger than any of that, right? So rejoicing in the middle of a prison situation is all about perspective. It's all about saying, okay, well, I don't have this thing, or I have this thing against me that's really horrible, but what I have going for me is God, and that is so much bigger than any of those other things. So that's how Paul was able to rejoice. But I love how it says that it will bring you peace, because once you start thinking about all the good things and the blessings that God has done for you, it really does bring you peace, and you start to realize, like, okay, this might not be the end of the world. Because I'm one of those people where lots of things are the end of the world. You can ask my sister. So the sky tends to fall a lot in my world. So I have to remind myself, I have to find those reminders of all those things that God has done for me and is doing for me and is doing for other people, and then it reminds me, okay, it's not really the end of the world. So as I rejoice for the good things, it brings me peace about the things that I normally wouldn't have peace about. But also it says that let your gentleness be evident to all, and that reminds me that when we rejoice, it's a witness to other people. Right. Because like I said, people who are maybe like kind of watching you and kind of investigating Christianity, but maybe wouldn't even want to say that, but are observing your life, like those are the moments that are going to be the most powerful to them. Good. It's not when you're like on the mountaintop, like she'll win a lottery ticket or whatever, but like when they see that difficult situation that you're going through and they see that somehow you have the strength to still praise God through it. So I love that. So that was his first thing that I think gives Paul a great prison perspective. He was rejoicing through the whole thing. Instead of, commiserating with, everybody just kind of feeling sorry for themselves. And then I love this passage that we read. He talks about thinking about whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right. Think about that stuff. And we've kind of already touched on that a little bit. But the power of what we think about is so powerful in our lives. And so you may be like, well, how can I change the way I think? Because that's pretty hard, right? It's like, it is. I'm not crazy. I mean, I don't know how to rewire it up there as hard as I could. But I think that the way that we can work on that is to fill your mind with the things of God all the time. Not just when you're in a hard time, right? Because if you see those people who are succeeding and managing to have joy in a hard time like Paul, it wasn't something that he developed in that moment. It was something that he practiced in his life so that when that moment came, he was able to be that person because he was already God's word was in his heart, that he spent time with God every day, those kind of things. So how can you think about what is lovely and what is pure and what is noble? You have to do it every day. You have to spend time in God's word. You have to spend time in worship. Music is always very, helps me clean out my mind when I'm stressed, so there's different ways. But I would encourage you not to wait till that moment when, the crisis hits and then suddenly you're like, oh, I need to fill my mind with good things. Already have that stuff stirring in your heart because you're serving God on a daily basis and checking in with him and filling your mind with those things. And we know there's a lot of garbage we can fill our minds with in the world. And so, maybe being more selective about the influences that we allow into our mind. Because sometimes we think, oh, that doesn't even affect me. A lot of that really does, And even if it doesn't affect you negatively, is it taking up time that you could be spending being influenced by something that would be much more beneficial to you? So it's kind of like, yeah, I could eat another ice cream cone. It probably won't kill me eventually, but it probably won't kill me. But I might be one way. But yeah, so if you guys don't see me again, ask her if it was ice cream. But I would probably definitely have some better benefits if I ate a salad, all right? So I did not plan to put this in, now I'm feeling convicted. Now I don't know where we're going to eat later. I know! Good. Can you get salad at Cheddar's? Okay, anyway. But we digress. But, so even though may not be super detrimental because we don't want to be that judgmental person that like is questioning like every song you listen to or every movie you watch or whatever. But I think sometimes we do, or how much time you spend on Facebook. You know what I mean? Like none of those things are maybe bad in themselves, but it does, you only have so many hours in a day. So just like you want to maybe choose how you spend your calories, maybe you want to choose how you spend your time, maybe you want to choose what you give your access to your mind, you know? So, well, that went off the rails there for a minute. And then, so, rejoicing, thinking on positive things. And then the next example, or the next thing that I love about this is Paul, in the middle of the worst season of his life, well, I don't know, Paul had a lot of bad seasons. One of the worst seasons of Paul's life. He says to them, look at my example and follow me. That always impresses me when Paul says that, because how many of you would feel comfortable telling somebody, when you're not sure what to do, that God wants you to do, follow my example. Right? Be like, give or take. Right? But Paul was able to say that with confidence. And there really is a lot of truth to that, because Christian community is what helps us get through a lot of life situations, right? Because when you're completely isolated from Christian community, and you'll see that happen a lot with people when they're going through a hard time and they isolate themselves from church and different things, like how much harder it is for them to come through. But when you kind of surround yourself with people who are on the same journey as you, and they love you, and they love the Lord, like how much that can help you get through a hard time. When Paul talks in this letter all the time, in all of his letters, he gives these personal greetings, he mentions people by name who came to minister to him while he was in jail, and all those things. And so it's such a beautiful picture of Christian community that can really change our perspective in the middle of our prisons, right? Because we have people around us. And I love that Paul said, hey, I'll be your example, because I think in anything in life, you should always be chasing somebody who's a little bit further along on the journey than you. Like I'm in sales, right? So I surround myself with people who sell way better than me, and I'm like, tell me everything you know, because I want to like grow in my business. If I make sure that I'm the best seller in the room, I'm never going to learn anything, right? So I think it's the same way with our faith, right? Find somebody that can be a bench, like can set a benchmark for you. That's your faith bench. That's your You told me. It's so awful. Just kidding. So you want to have that person ahead of you. I don't recommend that. No, I'm just kidding. That would be a word. This is
what will happen.
To go into, but find that person who's a little further. They're all like, why did we come out today? Find that person that's a little bit further ahead of you on the journey, and use them as somebody that you can, chase. But then also have somebody that's a little bit further behind you that you take the time to, not that you're judging where somebody is in their walk with the Lord, because it's not exactly like a linear process, right? We're all kind of on this journey. But find somebody who maybe doesn't have somebody that's, knows the word as much as you do, or has as much experience as you. And I think as you build that kind of community where we're always trying to look up to somebody that's, that we see representing a Christian life really well, and then we're trying to help people who are trying to find their way. I think that is what brings Christian community together in a really beautiful way that helps us get through these hard times, which I think was really helpful for Paul when he was in his prison. And then, I love the be content. He says, I'm grateful for what I got, right? I'm grateful that you gave me this gift, but also, even if I didn't have your gift, I've already learned what it means to be content in any and every situation. And again, coming from Paul, where he's sitting in jail, in house arrest, and having him be able to say, I'm content. I've had seasons in my life where I've had a lot, and I've had seasons where I've had a little, and I've learned to be content in any and every situation. And again, I think that the way we get to that is to remember that what we do have, that can't be taken from us, in our relationship with Jesus, and our eternity in heaven, all of those things, they so outweigh anything else that we're going through that's what I think brings us that contentment in the moment where things aren't going the way that we would want, right? Mm-hmm. And I've gone through some difficult seasons in my life, and what was really freeing it was about 5 years ago, I guess, that we went through a really hard season, and it felt like we lost kind of everything, except for my family. But what was interesting during that season was it was so freeing, because since then I'll find that I'll be in a situation where normally, Tracy before that time would have been panicked about this one thing falling apart, and then I'm now I'm kind of I've survived worse. We're gonna make it, because you kind of start to build that assurance that God took care of me in that situation. There's literally nothing that can confront me that my God is not bigger than, right? So I think that's how Paul gets to that contentment. So I would encourage you to like, I'm a big believer in like writing things down or like kind of giving yourself, maybe you're not like a person that likes to write, but maybe you're a person who, maybe like if you had a certain object that would remind you of something, there's lots of different ways that you can kind of create like a memorial to something good that God has done for you. And I always think that that's a really powerful way. In the Old Testament, they do talk about that a lot. When a certain place would happen, they would build like a special structure or something, and they'd be like, anytime your kids see this structure or whatever, tell them what happened to us and this amazing miracle that God did for us. And I try to do that in my life where I have those, so in my life, for me it's more just a mind thing where I have those moments in my life that I just remember. Those are the ones I go back to. When everything seems to be falling apart, I can go back to that picture or that journal that I wrote or whatever, those different things, and be like, oh, but remember this, right? Instead of just focusing on the present moment. And then that last verse that we read, because I'm doing this all on your screen. But anyway, I love how he says all that. He says that, you know, I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. And if you read the story of Paul, he went through some crazy stuff. So like he really did. There were times where he did without and times where he did well. And then he ends it with, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. How many of you have heard that verse before? I love that verse, but I also find it amusing the way in which we use that verse. Because if you read it in context, it's being written by a guy who's in jail and who's going through great suffering, and he's saying, I've gone without food, I've had money, I've not had money, but I can do all of this through him who gives me strength. Not really the way we tend to use the verse, right? It's usually like, I know I can't afford this purchase, but I can do all things. Who gives me strength, right? Like, you know, like, I know I didn't get a degree in this, but I'm pretty sure I can get that job because I can do all things. But that's not really like honoring the nature of the scripture, right? Because the scripture is saying, I like to think of it more as I can endure all things because of God who gives me strength. Like there's nothing that can come my way that I can't overcome because of God who gives me strength. Not that God's going to give me anything he wants because of his strength. Because if we all got everything we wanted, we'd be a hot mess, right? So anyway, those are just some reflections I had on Philippians. Like I said, I talk fast, even though I could talk like yeah, so we're pretty fast. But, and I didn't eat before I came, so, no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, salad, followed by ice cream. But I love this book, and I just think it's a great reminder. So I just encourage you to I encourage you to read it, because like I said, it's a short read. So you can get through it. So if you're in a moment where things in your life aren't going the way that you want, it's a difficult time or crisis time, I love the book of Philippians for that, because it brings you out of it a little bit. And take some time to look outward to other people, and that's what I'm going to challenge you to do right now as we get ready to pray. Because the whole point of Philippians is that Paul in jail is taking that time to reach out to other people. And I find that really helps to give me perspective. Like when I'm going through a difficult season, but I take the time to see a friend who's in need in a different way or whatever, and I kind of just focus on blessing that friend and helping that friend like Paul's doing with this letter. It kind of brings me out of my situation and helps me find that peace and that joy and that perspective that I think Paul has. So I kind of challenge you right now, just to give it a minute. Think about a person that you know that could use your prayers right now. Because sometimes it's so easy to be like, pray, I'm going to pray for myself, right? Like, I want God to do this for me. But I'm going to challenge us today to pray for somebody else, to think about somebody else that could use your encouragement. And then think about a tangible act that you could do to show that encouragement, to help that person, right? Not in a dramatic sort of way, but just a way that you could reach out, say a kind word, check in on somebody who's going through a hard time, to kind of help you bring perspective to your own life. So does anybody feel like you kind of got somebody you want to pray for? You know, pray for together? All right, let's do it. God, we thank you so much because you are so good and so gracious to us. And we thank you that even when we're in times that feel like everything's falling apart, we can rejoice and rejoice again. And we can still be used by you. Paul, even in this darkest time, as he's sitting in jail, he still found a way to be a blessing to others. He still found a way to do the work that you call him to do. And because he had a great perspective, he was able to have joy and peace and contentment in a difficult time. God, I pray that for all of us, that we would be, do as Paul asked and follow his example. And that when we're in a difficult time, we would be able to rejoice and we would be able to minister to others. And Lord, I pray right now for all of the friends, all the loved ones that have come to mind. And I'm sure every one of us is praying for someone with a different situation. But I pray for all of those people right now who maybe are in a difficult time in a prison season in their own life, and they don't have the kind of perspective we have maybe. Or maybe they are believers, but because they're in the middle of it, it's hard for them to have the right perspective right now. God, we want to stand in the gap for them. We want to believe for them for, not only for resolutions to their problems in the present, but also, God, just for a revolution in their mind, God, that they would be able to see you working in the midst of their situation, and that you would bring them peace. And God, use us to be your hands and your feet, whether that's sending a letter like Paul did, or whether that's showing up at somebody's house with a casserole, or whether that's just checking in on somebody to say, hey, I was thinking about you. There's hardly anything more powerful than that, just to message somebody and say, hey, I've been thinking about you, and how are you doing? God, help us to be those people that show compassion to others instead of focusing only on ourselves. And we thank you for that. In Jesus' name.
Amen.